Hi there, video number 2 coming your way. Today we're going to be learning about factorials and permutations. So let's consider this example. The Mulog family, which has Mom, Dad, Bill, Jill, and Phil, that means there are 5 people, they're going to line up for a picture. How many ways can they line up? Well, because there are 5 people, we have 5 tasks to fill. So, who is going to be first? There are 5 people. That means there are 5 possible outcomes for people that can be first. Now for who goes second, well, once somebody has lined up, they can't line up again. So now there's only 4 people that can go second. Third, now there's only 3 people left. Fourth, now there's only 2 people left. And fifth, there's only 1 person left. Lastly, is this an and or an or? Well, first person and second and third and fourth and fifth person are going to line up. So that leaves a total of 120 ways to line up. Anytime you have a number and you continuously multiply by consecutive numbers decreasing all the way down to 1, so you can't skip a number and you must go all the way down to 1, we call that a factorial. And rather than typing 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 into your calculator, you can just say 5 factorial. The symbol for factorial is an exclamation mark. So that exclamation mark means factorial. So that means start at 5, multiply with every single number all the way down until you get to 1. And 5 factorial is equal to 120. Now on your calculator, the button may look like an X factorial. It might look like an N factorial. And if you don't see it in your calculator, it could be one of those buttons where you have to press shift or second function first. If you don't see that button on your calculator, look for a button that says PRB. PRB stands for probability. And if you have that button, you're going to see these 3 choices. Later on we'll get to what these mean, but you'll pick that one there. So that's how you enter that into your calculator. So factorial notation is used when you need to multiply consecutive decreasing numbers down to 1. So n factorial is n times the next number down, which is n minus 1, times the next number down, which is n minus 2, times the next number down, all the way down to 1. Now, 0 factorial doesn't really make sense because you can't start at 0 and go down to 1. So even though it doesn't have a meaning, it does have a value and it's equal to 1. As well, 1 factorial is equal to 1. A little bit later on, you'll see why 0 factorial is equal to 1. You use the factorial button when you have n objects and you are arranging all of them. So in this example, we had 5 people and we are arranging all of them in a lineup. So here's some examples. Try finding that factorial button in your calculator and try 6 factorial. You should get 720. So I don't want you to just write the number 720 down. I want you to find that factorial button and make sure you can enter 6 factorial into your calculator and get 720. Here's another example. How many ways can a baseball coach make a batting lineup with 9 players? Well, that is your value of n. All the batting players or the baseball players are going to bat. So we are going to use all the players. So that's going to be 9 factorial. We have 9 players. We're going to use them all. And that equals to 362,880 different lineups. Don't forget to make sure you're writing whatever unit it is for your communication marks. So that's what a factorial is. Now, a permutation is an arrangement of objects of in different orders, and the order of the arrangement is important. So the factorial example that we just went through is a type of permutation because we are arranging objects and the order of the arrangement is important. So how people line up, the order that you line up is important. So a factorial is a type of permutation. The issue is that not all permutations use all the objects. For it to be a factorial, you have to be arranging all of the objects. It is possible to have a permutation, but you are not arranging all of the objects. You're only arranging some of them. In that case, we would use this notation, NPR. The N stands for the total number of items. The P is used because it's a permutation, and the R is the number of items arranged. Now technically, if we were looking at the example before and we had 5 people and we were arranging all 5 of them, you could use 5p5, but you could also just use 5 factorial. If you had 5 people, but you were only arranging 3 of them in a lineup, that's when you would use 5-3p. Some calculators, but not many of them, use this notation. So just take a look at the button on your calculator to see which one you use. So n factorial is used if you are arranging all the objects. NPR is used if you are arranging only some of the objects. The formula for NPR is n factorial over n minus r factorial. So your question may be, why is 0 factorial equal to 1? Well, this is the reason why. If you take a look at NPN, NPN means we are taking n objects and we are arranging all n of them. So in this case, n is equal to r. So using the formula, that would be n factorial over n minus n factorial. And n minus n is 0. And from before, our definition of factorials, if you are taking n objects and you are arranging all of them, that's the same as n factorial. And for n factorial over 0 factorial to be equal to n factorial, that's why 0 factorial has to equal 1. So NPN is the same as n factorial. So just a little bit of information as to why 0 factorial is equal to 1. So here's a couple of examples with NPR. So once again, 7p4 is equal to 840. I don't want you to simply write down the number 840. I want you to find the NPR button on your calculator, and I want you to try pressing 7, then the NPR button, then 4, and make sure you can get 840. Here's a word problem example. A family of 5 is taking pictures. In one picture, they want to arrange 3 people. How many possible pictures are there? That is an NPR situation, not an n factorial, because you are not arranging all the people. So in this case, n is equal to 5 and r is equal to 3. So that's 5p3, which is equal to 60 pictures. Another type of example you'll get is one like this. 190 factorial over 187 factorial. Now they give you big numbers on purpose because I want you to try to put that into your calculator. 190 factorial over 187 factorial. So pause the video for a second, try that in your calculator and see what you get. When you're finished, come back to the video. So pause now and try it. Okay, welcome back to the video. Hopefully you actually tried it, and if you tried it in your calculator, you would see that it would give you an error. The reason why this number gives you an error is because your calculator can only hold a maximum of 10 place values. By place values, meaning here, this number has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 place values. If your number has more than 10 place values, the calculator puts your number into scientific notation. Scientific notation would look something like this. That means your answer is not 1.6, it's 1.63 blah 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 times 10 to the 17. And that actually means move the decimal 17 places to the right. So if this isn't the answer to this, but if this was the answer to any of your counting questions, you would have to write this whole thing down, or you'd have to actually write the number with that decimal moved 17 places to the right. So as soon as your number has more than 10 place values, it puts it into this scientific notation. The maximum number that this exponent can be is 99, which means if you move your decimal 99 places to the right, the most place values that a calculator can hold in total, including scientific notation, is 100. So anytime an answer has more than 100 place values, the calculator cannot calculate it. If you used a computer, it could, but a calculator cannot. Calculating 190 factorial has more than 100 place values, and that's why we're getting an error. It doesn't mean there's no answer, it just means your calculator cannot handle that answer. There are, however, two different ways to answer this question without having to use the factorial buttons. The first way, to get 190 factorial, we start with 190, and that means we multiply by consecutive numbers decreasing until we get down to 1. All the way down to 1. On the bottom, we're starting at 187, and we are multiplying by consecutively decreasing numbers all the way down to 1. And luckily, because they're all factors, it's all multiplication on the top and it's all multiplication on the bottom, all of these numbers can cancel with all of these numbers, which means in your calculator you can just type in 190 times 189 times 188, and that is equal to 6,751,080. So that's the first way that you can answer this question. The second way to answer this question is to remember that NPR is equal to n factorial over n minus r factorial. Now in this example, n, which is on the top, or the n factorial is on the top, is equal to 190. On the bottom, the n minus r is equal to 187. So if n is 190 and n minus r is equal to 187, that means r has to be equal to 3. So if n is 190 and r is 3, then you could also type in 190 P3 into your calculator and get the same answer. And that R is found just by taking 190 minus 187. So if you get this question on a test or a quiz, there's two different ways of answering it. But if you put error, then you will not get the answer correct. So what I want you to do is to pause the video, try these examples, and then come back to the video and check your answer. Please try them all yourself before you continue the video. Pause now, try them, come back. Okay, welcome back. Just to remind you, you use n factorial if you are arranging all the objects. You use NPR if you are arranging some of the objects. The first two were just plug and play into your calculator. The third one, you should get an error because if you've got 5 objects in total, you can't arrange 7 of them. So in this case, you will get an error. Your n value has to be at least the value of your r value. For question D, you are not using all the values, so you're not using all the objects, so it's an NPR. For E, you are using all the objects, so it's an n factorial. F, you are not using all the objects, so it's an NPR. And G, you are not using all the objects, so it's an NPR. So that concludes our video on factorials and permutations. And if you have any questions, just note them down somewhere beside the question you had a question about and ask your teacher.